The void was cold, eternal, and merciless. Ships drifted in silence, their broken hulls glinting faintly against the pale light of distant stars. Battles had scarred this sector, scars of wars forgotten by those who fought them, save for the wreckage left behind. And in that graveyard of shattered vessels, a fragile spark of life clung stubbornly to existence. It was a human. The survivor floated inside the gutted remains of a transport ship, a lone heartbeat stubbornly defying the universe's indifference. No distress signal carried across the void, no Earth fleet would ever come searching here. The sector was hostile, quarantined, whispered of in galactic taverns as a place where even empires dared not trespass. The survivor should have perished, should have been erased like so many nameless souls lost to the cold. But fate intervened. A patrol vessel of an alien species, the Cairn, found the drifting ruin. The Cairn were not conquerors, not warriors, not even allies of Earth. They were a quiet, almost overlooked people, a minor race scattered across sparse colonies, known more for their humility than their strength. By every measure of galactic logic, they should have abandoned the derelict, left the human to the void. To rescue an outsider meant risk, and the Cairn had little to spare. And yet, they chose compassion. They brought the human aboard, sheltered them, healed their broken body. Not for diplomacy, nor gain, nor glory. Only because, in their words, no voice should fall silent if we can still hear it cry. That single act, born in obscurity, seemed to vanish into history. The human lived, returned to Earth, and the galaxy spun on. Empires rose and fell. Wars began and ended. The Cairn remained small, fragile, unnoticed. Their kindness seemed forgotten. Until the day came when the Cairn themselves stood on the edge of extinction. And humanity returned, not with one life, but with an armada. The story of the rescued human should have vanished into the endless churn of history. It should have become no more than a faint anecdote told in the mess halls of Earth's deep space fleets, a what-if buried under centuries of conflict. But humanity does not forget kindness, not when it is carved into the marrow of survival. The survivor's name was Commander Elias Rain. When the Cairn patrol vessel cut through the ruin-strewn void and found him barely alive in the shattered compartment of his wreck, they could not have known the man they pulled aboard would live to tell his story on Earth's soil. Rain's body had been ruined by vacuum exposure, his breath ragged, his heartbeat fragile. To heal him required medicine that the Cairn could scarcely afford to waste. Their colony's supplies were thin, every ampoule of serum meant a child treated, an elder given another year. Yet they chose to spend it on him, a stranger who might never remember them. And Rain did remember. Years later, when his voice rasped into microphones, when cameras captured his words, he spoke of them. He described their scaled hands trembling as they worked, their soft, glass-like eyes watching him with fear not of death, but of failing to save. He called them gentle guardians of life, who chose compassion over reason. His testimony spread across Earth's networks, and while the galaxy moved on, humanity quietly filed the moment away like a sacred promise. One day, we will answer. That day came sooner than anyone expected. The Cairn homeworld, Tyara, had always been overlooked by the empires that circled the galactic core. Its cities were built into valleys of blue stone, rivers wound between crystalline forests, and its skies glowed with pale auroras that made the night beautiful. But beauty was no shield. When the Drek's dominion came, they came like locusts. The Dreks were no empire of honor or diplomacy. They were a plague that consumed resources, shattered resistance, and left nothing behind but smoldering husks of worlds. Their fleets fell upon the Cairn colonies one by one, harvesting ore, enslaving survivors, and discarding corpses like husks. Tyara was next. The Cairn knew they could not fight, their defense ships numbered less than a dozen, their weapons outdated and weak. In desperation, they transmitted pleas for aid to the wider galaxy. None came. To the Council of Worlds, the Cairn were irrelevant, too small to sway galactic balance, too weak to be worth saving. Their extinction would pass like the flickering out of a candle. A tragedy, yes, but one lost among countless others. But among the endless signals cast into the void, one message reached Earth. The chamber of the United Terran Assembly was vast, its ceiling a dome of holographic stars. Delegates from colonies and fleets sat in silence as the message played. A Cairn elder, his frilled skin drawn with desperation, spoke in a trembling voice. "We are a people of peace. We have no armies. We have only homes, only children. The Drex descend upon us, and we cannot hold them back. If there is any among the stars who remembers us, if there is any who believes a small people deserve to live, hear us." The transmission ended. Silence hung heavy. Earth had no binding treaty with the Cairn, no alliance, no obligation. The Drex were strong, and humanity was not yet ready to confront them directly. Strategists whispered caution. Economists spoke of risk. Admirals pointed out the impossible odds. But then someone spoke from the assembly floor. It was Elias Rain. Though scarred, though aged, he stood tall in his dark uniform, his voice carrying across the chamber with the quiet power of memory. "They saved me," he said. "When the void would have taken me, when reason said to leave me, they chose mercy. One human. Just one life." His gaze swept the assembly. "Now they cry out, and the galaxy turns away. If we abandon them, then we are not who we claim to be. If they gave everything for one of us, how can we not give everything for all of them?" The chamber erupted, not with applause, but with fire. The vote was cast. And for the first time in history, Earth prepared not for defense, not for expansion, but for deliverance. The Cairn did not know. On Tyara, they gathered in the twilight as Drex fleets closed in, their skies haunted by distant shadows of warships. Children were hidden in mountain caverns, elders wept in silence, and every Cairn knew extinction's breath was near. Their last transmission spoke not of hope, but of farewell. Then the stars changed. The first Terran ship arrived not with fanfare, but as a single, silent colossus that slid from the void like a shadow of salvation. The TSS Valiant, a Titan-class dreadnought, dropped into orbit, its hull bristling with rail batteries and particle cannons that gleamed in the dim light of Tyara's sun. Moments later, a formation of destroyers followed, then carriers, then cruisers, until the skies above the Cairn world burned with the steel of an entire fleet. For the first time in their history, the Cairn saw warships not descending to enslave or consume, but to stand as guardians. The Drex fleet emerged soon after, dozens of spiked silhouettes clawing into real space. They expected another harvest, another easy conquest. What they found was a human armada waiting with weapons armed and vengeance alive in their hearts. The comms crackled. A Drex commander's voice, dripping with arrogance, hissed across the void. "You dare stand for these insects, Terrans? They are nothing. They are chaff." And humanity answered, their admiral's voice steady and cold. "They saved one of us. Today, we save all of them." The battle for Tyara began. The void erupted in light. Rail slugs screamed across the black, tearing through the first wave of Drex raiders. Particle beams lanced outward from the Valiant's massive spinal cannon, slicing a cruiser in half with surgical precision. Where Drex ships moved like predators, fast, jagged, swarming, the Terran fleet moved like a wall of iron, advancing with brutal discipline, each volley overlapping into a storm of annihilation. For the Cairn below, the night sky became a canvas of fire. Their people gathered on cliffs, on rooftops, even in the river valleys, staring upward as if witnessing a god's war. They had never seen fleets clash like this, never imagined the fury of interstellar battle fought on their behalf. The heavens themselves seemed to shudder. Yet for all the power humanity wielded, the Drex were no rabble. They had devoured worlds, broken empires, and their hunger was endless. They poured ships into the battle, wave after wave, their hulls bristling with hooked weaponry designed to gut and tear. The Terran line strained. On the command deck of the Valiant, Admiral Sarai El-Amin stood tall, her uniform unwrinkled despite the tremor of impacts shuddering through the ship. Her eyes burned on the tactical display, a sphere of red Drex signatures pressing against the blue formations of her fleet. "Hold the line," she ordered. "Carrier groups, launch interceptors. Flank squadrons, peel and cut their rear formations. We bleed them here." Her officers obeyed, their voices crisp, though every soul aboard felt the weight of her words. They were not merely fighting for victory. They were fighting for a promise, to a small, fragile race who had once dared to save a single human life. In the valleys of Tierra, Elder Kether watched the battle unfold through a hollow feed, his chest trembling with disbelief. Around him, cairn children clutched their mothers, and warriors with little more than hunting rifles stood helpless. "They came," Kether whispered. His scaled fingers touched the edge of the projection, as if he could feel the human warships through the light. They remembered. A youngling beside him, no older than 10 cycles, looked up with wide crystalline eyes. "Elder, will they win?" Kether wanted to answer. But the holofeed showed the truth. The Terran fleet was strong, yes, but the Drex were endless. Already, a human destroyer exploded in silence, ripped apart by 3 Drex raiders swarming like sharks. Another cruiser, its engines crippled, drifted helplessly before being gutted. The Elder bowed his head. "They will fight until nothing is left. That is their way." On the Valiant, alarms wailed. "Portside shields at 40%, an officer shouted. "Drex raiders breaching perimeter. Multiple hull breaches on the Resolute. She's burning." Admiral El-Amin's voice cut through the chaos. "Send the Resolute lifeboats priority escort. No Terran is left behind. And signal the fleet, no Drex sets foot on Tierra while we still draw breath." Her words lit through the comms, carried to every ship, every fighter pilot, every marine in armored exosuits preparing for possible ground combat. Across the Terran armada, the vow became a heartbeat, a rhythm that turned fear into fire. The Drex pressed harder, sensing blood. Their commander's voice slithered through open frequencies. "Terrans, you waste your lives for vermin. Withdraw, and we will allow you to leave with your fleet intact. Stay, and you will die here, forgotten." Admiral El-Amin answered with ice. "We do not forget. And neither will history remember you kindly." Then she gave the order. "All ships, break the swarm." It was a maneuver born not of caution, but of fury. Terran destroyers, instead of holding the defensive wall, surged forward in spearhead formations, ramming into the Drex swarm at close range. Fighters screamed past them in tight wings, tearing into enemy raiders with missiles that burned like comets. Human cruisers rotated broadsides, their rail batteries shredding enemy frigates at brutal proximity. The void became chaos incarnate. A Drex warship, hulking, spined like a predator's jaw, latched onto a Terran frigate, claws sinking into its hull. Drex warriors poured across the breach, snarling in armored carapaces. But the humans had prepared. Marines in powered exosuits met them in the corridors, rifles blazing, blades flashing. The clash became savage, personal, every hallway a slaughterhouse. Through every channel, one message rang clear. For Tierra. For the cairn. On the planet below, the cairn trembled as streaks of fire cut across the heavens, falling wreckage of ships, both Drex and Terran. Each explosion sent shockwaves of fear, each burning fragment a reminder that their fate hung in balance above. Some prayed to forgotten gods. Others wept openly. And some, young warriors with trembling hands, swore that if the humans fell, the cairn would fight with whatever stones and blades they could muster. Elder Kether, however, understood. This was not merely battle. It was a covenant sealed in blood. Hours stretched like eternity. The Drex pushed, humanity pushed back, and the space above Tierra became littered with debris. Ships drifted lifeless, broken husks glowing faintly in the void. Both sides bled heavily. But there was a difference. For the Drex, battle was hunger. For the Terrans, it was memory. Every ship lost, every comrade fallen, became fuel for their resolve. They did not fight for conquest, nor for resources, nor for glory. They fought for a debt repaid, because once, long ago, the Cairn had chosen to save a single human life. And now, humanity would either save them all, or fall beside them. On the bridge of the Valiant, the tactical displays shifted. The Drex swarm, though still vast, was faltering. Their losses mounted faster than their reinforcements arrived. The spearhead assault had gutted their center. Humanity's iron wall had cracked, yes, but it had held. Admiral Elamine exhaled, her voice steady. They bleed. Press the advantage. Push them from Tierra. A cheer erupted across the fleet, ragged but fierce. Yet in the cold silence of Drex command, their warlord hissed to his subordinates. Terrans, they think this is their victory. No. This is only their beginning of pain. Prepare the ground legions. Burn their fleet, burn their promises, burn their wretched kindness from the stars. And deep within the void, massive Drex carriers began to move, dark leviathans, carrying not ships but armies. The battle was not over. The war for the Cairn had only begun. The Drex carriers emerged from the void like nightmares given shape. Vast, jagged constructs, each the size of a Terran capital ship, split open along their armored spines, unleashing swarms of dropships. Thousands of them. They rained down toward Tierra in a storm of metal, burning trails across the skies. On the planet below, the Cairn watched their doom descend. Mothers clutched children, warriors brandished useless rifles, and elders wept. They knew what came with Drex ground legions: enslavement, slaughter, consumption. No Cairn world had ever survived once the beasts set foot on soil. But this time, they were not alone. Terran troop carriers broke atmosphere seconds after the Drex, their engines blazing through the clouds. Drop pods screamed downward, armored like meteors, each carrying squads of humanity's finest marines. Their descent shook the valleys, their impact cracked stone. And when the pods opened, Earth's warriors strode forth. Encased in towering exosuits, faces hidden behind visors glowing blue, they carried rifles that spat fire and blades that shimmered with plasma edges. They moved with precision, every step thunder. The Drex legions hit the ground in waves. Hulking, insectoid beasts with claws like scythes and armored carapaces swarmed across the plains. Their shrieks split the air, their limbs tearing through stone, their numbers a tide. The battlefield roared alive. Elder Kether stood among his people in the valley as Terran officers hurried them into underground shelters. He turned, his frail form silhouetted by the fires of descending ships. He saw humans sprinting into position, weapons flashing, voices calm and commanding. They fought not like conquerors, but guardians. A marine paused near him, visor flashing as she adjusted her rifle. Kether touched her armored gauntlet with trembling claws. "You came for us." The soldier's voice came through the modulator, steady and resolute. "We came because you once came for us." Then she was gone, charging into the fray. The first clash was thunder. Drex beasts hurled themselves into Terran lines, claws ripping, mandibles shrieking. But the humans met them head-on. Rail rifles thundered, tearing carapaces apart. Plasma blades hissed, severing limbs. Grenades erupted in concussive waves, blasting Drex into fragments of gore. Yet the enemy was endless. For every Drex that fell, 3 more surged over its corpse. Their claws found cracks in armor, their numbers forced Marines into brutal hand-to-hand combat. Screams filled the comms. Blood, human and alien, spattered across the soil of Tierra. Overhead, Terran gunships screamed across the skies, unleashing torrents of rockets into the Drex tide. But anti-air spikes from the carriers struck back, ripping human craft apart mid-flight. Burning wreckage rained onto the plains. The ground war teetered. Humanity had brought fire, but the Drex were hunger incarnate. On the Valiant above, Admiral Elamine watched the battle unfold in grim silence. Reports scrolled in, casualties mounting, lines faltering. She knew the truth: their fleet was battered, their ground troops outnumbered. If they held back, Tierra would fall. But humanity had not come to hold back. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Commit reserves. Every last drop pod, every last fighter. Tell them, this is not a battle of survival. This is a promise kept." The fleet obeyed. Reinforcements streaked into atmosphere, a rain of steel and fire. On the surface, Marine Captain Darius Holt stood at the shattered edge of the valley, his exosuit cracked and bleeding sparks. His company was down to half strength. Drex bodies piled around them, but the tide pressed closer. "We can't hold," one of his lieutenants shouted over comms. Holt raised his rifle, firing until the barrel glowed red. His voice was raw but unbroken. "We hold. Because this is why we're here. They saved one of us, and now it's all of them or nothing." His words spread across comms, carried into the ears of soldiers fighting in forests, mountains, cities. Across the war zone, weary Terrans found strength in the reminder. And they stood. In the cavern shelters, the cairn huddled in silence. The walls shook with thunder. Every boom, every tremor, could have been the end. And then came the sound they had never expected, the sound of Terran voices, rising over the comms, not in despair but in defiance. "Push them back. For Tierra. No retreat." The cairn children clutched one another, wide-eyed. For the first time, they saw their people not as doomed, but as worth saving. The battle raged into night. Fires turned the horizon crimson. Drex carriers loomed, but the Terran fleet above hammered them relentlessly, sacrificing ship after ship to keep them from reinforcing the ground. The Resolute, crippled earlier, dove on a carrier in a suicide run, detonating its reactor and tearing the beast apart. Her crew's final transmission echoed through the comms. "For the cairn. For Earth." On the ground, Holt's Marines made their last stand at the valley mouth. Drex bodies carpeted the earth, but the swarm pressed. Holt raised his rifle, only to hear the click of emptiness, no rounds left. He drew his plasma blade, chest heaving, prepared to die. Then the sky tore open. The Valiant itself descended lower, its massive hull blotting out the stars. Its spinal cannon charged, a glow building brighter and brighter until it seared across the plain. A single beam, white-hot, lanced downward, and the Drex tide evaporated in fire. Carapaces melted, beasts screamed, the horde burned into nothing. The survivors broke. The swarm scattered. What had been endless became a rout. Tierra was saved. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of flames and the sobs of relief. Human soldiers stood among corpses, armor scorched, weapons spent. Cairn emerged from their shelters, wide-eyed, trembling. For a long moment, neither moved. Then a child stepped forward. She approached a towering Terran Marine, her small clawed hand reaching up to touch the scorched metal of his exosuit. "You came back," she whispered. The Marine knelt, his visor lifting to reveal tired, human eyes. He smiled. "We said we would." The cairn wept openly then, rushing forward to embrace their saviors.